one, though at some point we might tend to deviate and try to, if some persons do not understand a particular concept, we might want to get it all over again and again. The main essence is for you to understand what each line of code is doing and understand the principles. If you are going for an interview kind of question, there are certain things they may not really ask you to code a whole lot of long lengths or lines of code. They might just give you a particular code and say, what do you think is wrong? How can you debug this? How can you make it so, how can you make it possible for this code to run? What should you do? What is the principle that is guiding this particular thing? So let's pay attention. Anything that we do here is really, really important. So the next thing I'll go to is simply functions. I will try to explain functions and I'll try to, okay, let me just start my screen sharing and let me try sharing my screen and create a new collab. So I'll create a new one, a new notebook. Excuse me. So I'll be sharing my screen shortly. Okay. So guys, I think you can see my screen right now. You can see my screen very well. Okay. All right. So I can go to settings and go to editor and increase the font size again in case. Okay. Okay, guys. We are going straight to functions, and someone will ask, well, we're trying to say, what is function? Okay, I would like to define function as in coding, in programming, there's what we call functions, and it's actually known as what? A special kind of code fragment. I tend to like a particular kind of section or fragment written to perform a specific task. For example, you have made use of certain inbuilt functions already, like the print function. You're using the print function all the time. You can see that the print function does a particular kind of thing, and which is to do what? To give the output of the code in which you are doing. So function is a special kind of code fragment written to perform a specific task. It can only run when you call them. It can only run when you call them, and functions could actually do what? Could have what we call parameters. I will give you examples. Let me just say something like let me say something like, okay, let me say function underscore name. So let's say this was a defined function, and we tend to like, okay, let's define a particular kind of function. And they say, okay, the function name for this particular, this is function name, function underscore name. And we decide to say, okay, instead of printing it out like the normal things we have been doing, we decide to say, we call out the name of this particular function, which is function underscore name. Immediately we run this, it's going to run the particular function or the specific task it has been called to do. And if you can see this particular place that is blinking right now, you can see this is where you pass your parameters inside of it. You pass your parameters. It could be maybe we are trying to create a particular function that has, you want to get the person's name. For this particular one is the name. You want to get the first name and the surname, or you even want to get details of the person. You can say, can decide to pass parameters like, okay, let's say name, comma, you can say age, comma, you can say language, something like that, and decide to use language. So these are parameters in which you are passing to this particular function. There is a way we do write function, and we always use the def kind of operation, which we are still going gradually to that level. I just want to introduce you to something that looks like what we are about doing, because if I start out to start telling you, okay, this is how we do it, but I just want you to understand what function does. It does a specific kind of task, and it's a special kind of fragment. It's only when you call it out, that's when it's going to perform that particular task. So I would like to, maybe let me just decide to clean this out and let's go to what we have. So we looked at certain functions already. I want to introduce you to the ones that we have used already, like the ones called, excuse me, like the type function. We used the type function before. If you say type, type is just to check the particular, what they call it, the particular type or the kind of data type in which that particular value has. So we can say, we can decide to say what is the type of, let's say, 67. If we decide to run this, remember, please, you do not do this in your Python. So let me just use print at once, because people might tend to get comfortable with collab and they tend to forget the syntax of Python in the other way. So if you decide to print the type of 67, which is a function too, if you decide to print the type, okay, I did not connect it before. So first thing you do is to connect your collab first before you run your code. So you can see it has brought out this. There are two functions here, the print and the type function. And you can see that in this type, I passed a parameter to it, and the parameter is 67. And I'm trying to say that I'm trying to take the value, the type of the value in which is 67. And you can see it is showing class integer. It is showing class integer. If I do the same thing also, click here and to add a new code, and I decide to say print, and I say type, can give me maybe a particular kind of maybe a string kind of character. This, you can say this is what Advion. You can say this is Advion. If you want to check the type, definitely it's going to be the particular function is trying to say that it's going to check the type, and which is class a string. This is a string because it is in a quote, the double quote. It could either be single quote as well. So another thing we can actually use also is I'm trying to introduce you to the functions in which the inbuilt functions first. Then we now create our own functions by ourselves. So I'll create another one. There's another particular kind of function that helps in. I can remember when one of us sent me his code. Was trying to create a particular game. So he tried to use integer to change some things, and he ended up changing a particular number that was supposed to be a decimal number to an integer number. So all those kind of things are what we call converting a particular thing, converting the given argument to a particular kind of data type. For example, let me try something like this. Let me use print. I'm going to use int. This is the int function. I'm trying to put in the int function. Let's say I want to change a particular number, and it's always known as casting. So let me tend to use, let's use 45.67, and I want to print this out. This particular int function is going to do what we call casting or converting. It's also known as casting too. So if we decide to print this out, this integer, this int function here is simply to change anything that is inside here to a particular integer. So that is the specific built-in function for this particular task in which it has executed for us. But what if we decide to use an integer? We decide to change it from this, excuse me, want to change it from this to, let's say you want to put a string. So let's use snake. Okay, let's use Python. It's very popular among us, Python here. So if we decide to use Python and decide to change this to an integer, something, I don't know what will happen, but let's see what will happen. So you can tell you that there is a value error. The value error means that this particular task in which this integer was supposed to cast, it cannot cast or convert a string character. So if you look at the error, it's saying value error, invalid literal for int with base 10 Python. It cannot change this string to an integer. So it will not work. It will cause a value error. But nevertheless, you can actually change something like this. Let's check if we change a number and we change, like, for example, 68. This is a string, right? If this is a string, let's see if it's able to convert it and see if it's going to work for us. So you can see it worked very well. It has converted the string, which was a number, into what? An integer. So that's it for integer at some point. And also, let's look at other functions too. We can also have the string. We can also have the string kind of function there, str, and decide to say, let's change, let's say a particular number, let's say 3.89, and we decide to run. I still keep on telling you, please, this is Colab. It might frustrate you if you go to PyCharm. Don't do the same thing. Just always use your print, and let's run this and see what it will be. So you can see right now, it's supposed to have changed this to what? It's supposed to change it to a particular one, a kind of what? A string. I think that this is something that it's not supposed to happen. It's supposed to show you something like a quote kind of indication right now. But nevertheless, you can try it in your PyCharm, and also it has changed this automatically to what? It's supposed to change it automatically to a string character. Okay. Sometimes you could misbehave, like I don't know why it's there. Maybe just trying to tell you that. But if you try to run, you can run the type of this now. You might decide to say this might be a string, because if you check the type now, if you decide to check the type of this particular let's check. Sorry, it's definitely supposed to be a string, because okay, let's use type. Let's use type, and let's try. Please mute yourself wherever you are. Please mute yourself wherever you are. It's supposed to have showed type. I don't know why. So you can see it's supposed to, it's this number automatically has become a string. It's supposed to have showed you a kind of a result that shows a quote. So if you look at the type of this, it has changed it to what? To a string. That's why I wanted to confirm the type, which is what? A string. So we can also decide to change certain functions too, inbuilt functions. We have something like, let's say, print. We have print, and we have a particular inbuilt function like float. We have float, and we decide to change this. Okay, let's use 68. We decide to print this and change it to float. And if we can click on this, you can see that it has changed to a float number, because it has a decimal here, 68.0. Okay, and let's try something else. Let's try other things that might cause error for us, so that we'll be able to see those of us that like trying things, trial and error. So let's try. Okay, let me change this to a float. Let me change this to a string, and let's see what it will still give us. So I give it. Okay, if I print it out here, you can see it has changed it to what? A float number, to even when it was a string. So let's go straight to another particular kind of inbuilt function. Let's define a variable name. Let's say call that variable name num, and say that particular num is let's say minus 70. Is that minus 70? Okay, let's say 65. We use minus 65 and say, okay, now let's print what? Let's print the float of it. Let's change this particular string to a float, and let's say float, and we put num here, because we are defining it as a variable, which is, someone is in the chat room. I don't know what it's saying. So we can decide to change this, and if you run this now, you can see it has changed to minus 65.0. But what if we decide to do something like this and say, instead of putting 65 minus 8, put it at the back, and let's see what we have. We're just trying some things out. It will definitely not run. It's called a value error, cannot convert string to float. Okay, but it actually converted the other string to a float before. But why now? Because this is not even valid as a number itself. Okay, so let's go to the next thing I'm going to look at is, I may not really take much time in this particular section. It's going to be the math function. There are certain functions in Python that comes in a module. Then we have what we call a module. A module is simply is any Python file that includes executable Python code. That means it has a particular kind of folder that has Python code embedded in it. That if you call it out, if you remember when I said if you put in the dot operation, you are trying to call it out. Remember when we were using the keywords in Python when Mr. Dwakatande asked me a question, why is it that we are bringing that other ones out? How did you get it? It is a module that is being stored in the Python file that you can use it to do mathematical operation, a mathematical kind of functions in them. So we look at, so how do you do it? That the same way we imported the keyword, we also import math, and we can decide to say import math. So if we import math, and we try to say, okay, let me shift and enter. Excuse me. If you decide to print this math and see what it has, what you are trying to get the information about it, it will tell you module math built in. That means it's an inbuilt kind of module. Okay, let's use it practically. Let's use it practically. And also in Python, there are certain things, before I move, there are certain things, there's what we call the help built-in model. This particular help built-in model is trying to tell you that there are certain things that you can actually call Python to say you don't understand why this particular thing is being called. So let me see what it actually does. So I decide to use the help module, and I print out the maths and say, what does it really do? Let's print it out and see. So you can see the results. It uses the log, it uses the power, it uses radian, reminders, sine h, square root, tan. A lot of things are actually embedded in the math function. Okay, so instead of you hard coding, see a lot of them. I can go a long. There are a lot of them. There are certain operations in a Python file. I can remember one of my students back in the previous class. She doesn't like all this hard coding, all these things. You just go to import math. Once she imports math model, she uses it to do a calculation, and it's still the same thing. It gives the same answer. So instead of running through all those things, you can just decide to create a particular kind of import the module and use it. So let's use it for a practical case. You can use it for a particular practical case. Maybe, for example, we want to, let me try and see something. Let's try and get something done. Let's say we want to find the parameter, or we want to get the pi of it. We know very well what pi is. Pi is 3.141. So if you want to print it out and check it out yourself, and sorry, I decide to print math.pi. So you can decide to print math.pi. So this particular, you can see it has brought out different options that are available for math. So if you print out math.pi, that this dot is trying to tell you that inside the module math, I want you to call out a particular kind of operation, which is the pi. If you print this out, it's already embedded in your system, your module is 3.141 and so on and so forth. So let's say we want to calculate the perimeter. I can remember one of the coding interviews before, I saw it before now. They asked someone to find the perimeter, what they call it, the area of a particular kind of circle using the Python kind of file, and the person actually did it wonderfully. So let me try and create a kind of scenario like that to using this math function. So let's say we want to calculate the perimeter, that's the circumference of a circle that has the radius. Let's say it has the radius of 12 cm. And for sure, perimeter, for us to find perimeter is always, I think, perimeter should be what, guys? Perimeter, what's the value for perimeter?
2 pi r.
2 pi r, very good. So we can define a particular kind of variable and say, okay, it is 2, it's always 2 pi r. That means it's 2 times pi, is always 2 times pi, and also times what? Sorry, also times r. So if we define this particular, you want to find this out in your function using the math function, we can decide to say, okay, let's use let's use something like this. Let's enter and let's define a variable name. Let's say the radius. Let's define the radius to be. We said the radius will be 12. So the radius will be 12, and we now say, okay, now we know that perimeter is going to be, we know that perimeter is going to be what is going to is equals to 2 times. Now what is going to happen now? I'm going to use the math.pi function here. So I'm going to say math.pi, bring out pi, excuse, times what? R. If you do this, I will now say, okay, let's now say, okay, enter. Okay, let's click shift enter. There's no error in our code, and we decide to print what? We are printing perimeter now. Perimeter. If we decide to print perimeter now using the math inbuilt function, we can see that automatically perimeter now becomes 75.3988 and so on and so forth. So this is a practical example of how you can use a math function. You can decide to use excuse me, other operations that we have in Python for the particular kind of math operation. We can decide to use the sine, the radians, and also please take notes of this. It's a very popular interview question. It's always more like calculate the sine of 30 degrees. If you want to use a particular kind of using a math function to do this, you have to first of all use the radian. You can't just say math.sine, you now put in the degrees, which is what they call it. It's going to give you the answer, but the answer is going to be wrong. For example, let's use something like this. Let me make a practical example about that. Let's use something like this. Sine. Let's define it as sine. Sine equals to, let's say we call math dot sine, which is a particular kind of built-in. It works in your Python. So we decide to put in, let's use 30 degrees, which is what we want to do. And we now decide to, say print. Now decide to print sine. Decide to print sine and run this. You can see the answer is minus 0.988, which I'm very sure that the sine of 30 is definitely not minus 0.98. Guys, it is not. If you check it out, I think then it was half. That is almost 0.49 something or 0.5. I think guys, you can just figure it out, check it out. Or someone should confirm this. Is sine 30
0.5.
0.5, fantastic. But if you look at it, you're using the math operation right now, the math function to bring out dot sine, and you're putting the 30 degrees, it's giving you a wrong answer. So what you are going to do, we make use of radian. We make use of radian in this particular case, and radian makes it very wonderful for us to get in the right answer. So I'm going to do right now, let me create a code, and let's calculate in 30 degrees, and let's give a degree to be, let's give it a variable name 30. And once we do that, we tend to say, okay, let's calculate the radian, and we're going to define another a variable name radian, which that. Guys, can you still hear me? Because I think my headset has turned off now. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're back now.
Okay, very good. So we can define a particular kind of radian. Is not right now. This part is radians that is in the math function, but radian. I just remember when we said we have to define a variable name in a way that it's descriptable. It is something that you can describe something for someone. So we can say radian is equals to math dot radians, and math dot radians. You now reference the degree, which is the degree here, which is 30. Okay, we have defined this is the variable name degree, which we gave to 30. So we now said, okay, now let's now print the excuse me. Let's now print it out and see what we'll have. Let's print it out and see what we'll have. Okay. So now we have defined radian, and we say, okay, now we have gotten this radian. It's been stored in the math.radians is equals to the degrees. So whatever we are going to do now, we are going to say, we can now define another variable. We can say maybe the sign. We can still use sign. Let's run this out. It will still work for us. Okay. Now we have what do you call it? Try to avoid the error of this line 18, the cell 18, which was printing sign directly from math.sign 30 degrees. So what we are going to do next is we are going to reference this radian variable name, which we have defined to have math.radians that has the degree. So if we do this, we now say sign. The first sign did not work for us correctly. So we can say sign equals to, we can say math, sorry, math dot sign. We now reference the radian here. We now reference the radian here. And if we decide to print, sign now, the new variable name for sign, allocation for sign, let's see what we'll have, if we will have something different or it's going to be different. So if we look at it, you can see, guys, it has actually given us what we are supposed to have. We have 0.4999, which approximately is 0.5. So you can see the difference. This is one of the key questions they might tend to ask, especially when it comes to this sign, when you're trying to find the sign of a particular. So please take note, radians for this particular incident is very, very important. I've seen it severally. So now we go straight to building our first, defining our own function by ourselves, not the one that Python is inbuilt Python for us. With this, we want to create our own function. We want to make our own function by ourselves. So we'll go straight and, sorry, let me, oh God, okay. I'm supposed to create, I had to, okay, sorry about that. I'm supposed to create it here. Okay, so let's define our own function by ourselves. How do we? And the first one we are going to do, we are not going to input the parameters. We don't want the parameters for now. Remember when I said I want it to be step by step? And let's define a function without parameters for now. So let's define a function. We can define a function. You can see DEF, it's always meant to define, it's an identification, it's like an ID card that particular thing you're doing is a particular function. We can decide to use function name. You can say function. Remember when we said the first one we started, we can let's just use it, function underscore name, and you can see I'm going to pass a open and close bracket. This is where you're supposed to put your parameters, and I end it with a colon. It is very important that you end your functions with colons. If it doesn't work that way, the ones you have built by yourself, it will cause an error. And watch what will happen in the next thing I'm going to do right now. Immediately I press enter, it gives me an indentation. And in the indentation, showing that this particular function you want to build now is in a particular kind of scope, is in a particular kind of region, which is only for that particular function. So if you backspace and take it backward and start from the first line, your function is trying to tell the function that I am not part of you. It's not anything that you execute, it will not be part of me, which is not true. So how do you create? It's always either you use a tab, which you can create a tab. A tab will always be it's always a way of making it work. Just a tab will create you an indentation. It's always called the indentation. So anything that is inside the indentation is called, it could actually be what the scope of that particular function. So what we do now, either a tab or 4 spaces. You can just keep 4 spaces. Very, very important too. So let's just create a particular kind of function name and say, this you could actually say it is my first it is my first function. So I can just say print it's okay, my first Hope you guys are seeing me. I'm seeing someone in the chat room. Someone saying it's showing now. Please, are you guys seeing my screen? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is my first function. I can decide to say this is my first function. And if I say this is my first function, and now, before, we decide to say, we decide to print some things and say, okay, we are going to go and print my first function. If you try it out, it's not going to work. For example, let's say, let me run this now and say, okay, let me run and move to the next line. Let me create a code and say, now we call functions. We do not print function. We call them out. And once we call them out by their names, it's going to print, it's going to perform what it's supposed to do. And in this particular function, the only task it's supposed to do is to print my first function. So let's call it out. We just call it out. We're going to just say function. It was function underscore. You can see it has brought out options already. The function underscore name, and you put a open and close bracket, and immediately you run this. You can see it has showed you my first function. So this is trying to tell you that this particular function, it's actually to print my first function. You can decide to put anything in the print. This one is without a parameter. We'll still get there. We are still going gradually and gradually. Okay, let's define certain things now. Let's try and make it more advanced for us, and let's see the usefulness of function. Why are we using function? Function helps us to not to hard code, like trying to print all the time. Maybe we want to create a particular kind of someone's data, maybe students' particular kind of data, and you are storing certain things in a function. Instead of going to print them one after the other, or trying to print each of them, each variable name one after the other, you use a function. And we are going to see like a practical example now. Let's use something like print. Let's use print. We want the person. First of all, we want someone's name. We can decide to say we want name, so we can use name, and let's use column and keep space, and let's say the person's name is Ekemini O2. Can use Ekemini O2 here. That's for name, and decide to say, can just say print. Can say print and use another one. Let's say we want the age of this particular person. We can just say age. Now say okay, what's going to be the person's age? Can just say let's say 34. Let's use 34. Okay, and now decide to go back again and say print and say what's the person's language? What language is it? Does he understand? So you can just say language. You can decide to use what they call it. Let's definitely is Python. So once you use Python, and you can see each of them, we are printing. And if we do this, if you run this code, if you run this, you can see Camino 234 Python. So you can see all these things. We do not need all these things in your function. We can just decide to say, let's do something like this and say, we define a particular function. Just say define, let's say the student's name. You can just say the student's name, student underscore name, and we use this. It's very important. You put your colon and you, okay, and say print what you can just use the same thing here. You can just decide to copy. Next here. Okay, so this particular function, if you anywhere you call out the student's name, instead of going to just print this out again and again, though as we go on, we'll see a lot of things added to a particular function. We'll look at a lot of things added to it, but this student name may turn to student data, and we'll put all of them together. So we are doing it step by step. So if you decide to do this, something will happen right now, guys. If I don't run this code now, it could have given me an error. So I've decided to run it before I move to the next cell. So if I decide to call this student, okay, it's showing already. student underscore name. I make sure I call out the function and I play it here. You can see it's going to give me a Ekemini02. So you can also do the same for age, do the same for a language, and we call them out one after the other. Okay, so we can decide to do that one all by yourself over there. I will try as much as possible to do that when I have questions from you. After your questions, let's go there. So I'll try to stop my screen. Okay, maybe I'll continue with the screen share and ask if you have any questions right now for me. Please raise up your hand if you have written down somewhere. If you have written it down somewhere, if you have questions, please ask now. Okay, hands are up. Okay, we'll entertain questions right now. Okay, I'm seeing Mr. Okweyemi Fortunla already. Your hand is up. Please, you have the floor. Next will be Infonobon Ford. Okay.
Thank you. I am trying to follow you on using my PyCharm, but it's not working. I'm trying to do everything you're doing. I'm trying it on my PyCharm, but it's not working, especially this define function name and all that. It's not working. When I try to run it, it's not actually bringing out the result I'm seeing yours bringing out.
Okay,
So
which particular one is exactly?
All from define function name and print my first function and all that. When I try to run it, it's actually not
I wish you could share your
responding.
screen. What is this showing in your terminal? It's supposed to show an output. Remember when I said
Is
you
that
should always use the print function? Remember all those things is very, very important. Did you
yes?
run
Is that
it?
even,
Did you run
yes?
it?
Yes, I've
There's
been running.
always
Is
an
it even,
option there on PyCharm to run up at the top. You run with run main.
run main? Is it run main?
Yes, you run that particular one you are doing right now. You're supposed to do that.
Yes, I've been doing it. It's still not responding. I don't know why.
Okay,
I
well,
don't
maybe
know why.
I'll try to fix that out in the next class or maybe very
Can you
soon.
share a screen or take a
But I
snapshot
wish
of
you
it
could
and
share
drop it
his
in the
screen. He
group?
said he's using his system.
I'm
Okay, maybe
using
you
my
can take a
system. So it's
snapshot
He's using his phone
in
to
the group.
connect, but he's using his system to code.
wait.
You just snap and send to the group.
Let me see if I can snap it and send it.
Okay, Mr. Fonobon Ford, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'm asking about the Radian in the sign. When you are trying to import the sign, is it only that for the sign function that we only to import the, the Radian?
Hello, yes, you can actually use the sign. Also, it's applicable to other what they call math operations like cosine and the rest. So it's always advisable to use your radian at that particular point.
Okay, okay.
Okay, Mr. Kwemi, you want to share something? You said you wanted to send a screenshot. Any other
Yes,
question?
I've sent it. Have you seen it?
Okay, where did you send it, sir?
Hello.
Where did you send it? Is it to the
Have you
WhatsApp
seen
group?
it? I sent it to our chat. Yeah, just open the chat. You'll see it.
Okay,
You've seen it?
let me check it out. I've not seen it yet. I'm on the last message I'm seeing in the adjunct chat room is
I didn't send it to the
okay,
WhatsApp
doctor.
group. I sent it to the Teams chat room.
Okay, the
Hello,
teams.
can you hear me?
Okay,
Yes. Just check the
okay,
chat room. You will see.
okay.
Yes. That should be it. Yes.
Okay,
Can you see it?
okay, where did you call out your function? Okay, I'm still looking at it right now. Function name.
Okay. So I've been trying to print it. It's not
Your
responding.
function, Okay. Your function, you call your function still in the same what do you call it? The same block. You're supposed to leave the block. Sorry about that. Leave the block and
Okay.
yes.
So each line of code starts from a different block.
Yes, once you want to call out your function, sorry about it. Once you want to call out your function, it should come out in a different line. It should not be a part of the block. Take it out, maybe like move like 3 spaces and backspace and let it start from the first line. Like it should start from the first. There should not be any space and call it out. Try it
Okay,
out.
I'll do that and get back to you.
Okay, just try it out. And also your students underscore name, put it at this part as if you are starting your function. Just call it out.
Okay, when you call out the function, it has to be on a separate block.
Yes, on a separate block, and it should be
right.
It should be on the starting line, and keep like 3 spaces.
Okay, I still don't get that. Anyways, maybe okay. Don't worry, I'll work around it and get it. I was just wondering why it was not working, and now I understand.
Okay, just try
and sort it.
Yeah, just try and put it at the end of it. Just like let me do something like let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. Okay, for something like this. Now, if I want to call out this function now,
yes.
if I want to call out this particular student name, I go back, I go down again, and I backspace, and I decide to call out student.
Still in the same block.
Yes, like it's not on the same. This is not on the same block. This print is different. Like I'm leaving the block, the function block entirely. That indentation, I'm avoiding that indentation right now.
Okay.
So let me try and run it here. Sometimes pull up my disturb, but let's try and run it here if it's going to work here. So let me take and see.
Yes.
It has worked here because I've left a space, like 3 spaces, and I've given it like I'm starting from the very first line here. So it has called out the function which is supposed to do, which is a Kemino2. So try it out. It's supposed to do the same for your PyCharm.
Okay, I'm still trying.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, any other questions? Any other questions?
Not for now.
Anybody has any other questions for now? Okay. Okay. All right. So with no questions, I would like to just write 1 or 2 lines of code just to make sure we progress gradually and see the usefulness of function. So let me go back to my Colab. I hope you can still see my screen. So yes, I'm very sure of that. So I'll create another code, and I decide to use, let me use this particular one. Let me create a student age. So let me just say dev space, this particular one will be student underscore. Let's use is age for now. So let's use age, and let's define another function. And once you do that, what are we going to do next? We are going to print what they call it, the age. So let me, I like my own copy and pasting here. It saves me a whole lot of stress. And so we can just decide to do this. If you decide to call this out, it's going to work for us. So if you can say student age, it will definitely work for us. We can decide to, the next one we want to do right now, let me just run it. I'm just trying to make you understand how a function do work. So we can decide to say def. We can also use def for student language. You can just use for student underscore language. So which language are they speaking? So which language are they speaking? Is it Python? Is it JavaScript? And never forget your colon, very important. And we decide to print. We are printing the language in which is for a Kemino2 here. The language is what is Python. The language is Python. So we decide to use it, and we are good to go. So we can see we have defined three, what they call it, we have defined three functions here. We said the student's name, the student age, and also the student language. So we can decide to say, okay, what if we now decide to print them out one after the other? It will come out as let me put it out here. You can decide to say we call them out each. So the first one was student underscore name. So student underscore name. Call it out the first one. Click again, student underscore. The next one was age. So I think it's age. Okay, we call it out again. The next one is going to be student. Please remember that we are just building this particular function from the scratch. Please try, if you don't understand at this stage, it's very important you ask questions. If you don't understand what is going on, it is very important you ask questions. So if I decide to run all this, did I define this one? Did I play this one before? Because it has not shown me this stick. So if I decide to run this for us, you can see that showed me name, Ekemino2, age 34, language, Python. So we can decide to see at each of the functions are coming out one after the other instead of doing the print. And also it's also cumbersome here. I'm looking at student name, you see the same thing. Student age is almost the same thing as doing print each of these particular things. So we move straight, we just say, we put the data together and said we want a particular function that does all of this. We want a particular function that does all of this. We can just say student. I want to name that particular function student data. So I can decide to just copy this out and create a new cell and now define another function called, I'll define another function, say maybe student, can decide to say student underscore data. Student underscore data, divide to, I'm not putting parameters for now, and I use my colon and I call out all of them. Control V, and you can see there is an error if I don't put this, if I don't put this tab, it's going to create an error. So now if I do this and I definitely say, okay, now I want to call out the function of student data here. So if I decide to do this, Control C to copy, and I create a new code, and I do this, and I paste, and I call this out, is going to bring out Ekemino2 age name, Ekemino2 age 34, language Python, something like that. So we can see the usefulness of your functions. There will be a time you'll be looking at the input function, you'll be storing data in this, and you need to just call out the function name and it will work for you. So at this particular point, I would like to say that please, we'll be ending tonight's session here. And if you have any questions right now, please ask. At this particular point, if you have any questions or you have any contributions or you have any observations, please, you can say it now. I will go over to the teams and I'll see whose hand is up. Okay. All right. So I will stop my screen sharing. All right. So, okay, it's recorded. Thank God. I've almost forgotten I recorded this session. Okay. Ope Mizan is up first. Okay. Mr. Ope,
sorry, I forgot to lower it, but I've gotten the other one. Thank you.
Did it work for you?
Yes. Thank
Fantastic. Okay, Mr. Manuel is next. Mr. Manuel Amodu, you're next.
Yeah, my hand has been up since. Can you hear me?
You are breaking.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. I can hear you. I don't know about others.
My hand has been up since. I have not been following. Understand what you've been doing since. You're a bit fast.
Okay, what is your challenge? You said you have not been following. Is it the method of explanation or the missing of classes? I think you are breaking. I can't really hear you.
Can you hear me?
Is it on your way home or the traffic is disturbing? Please,
Yes.
I don't know what Mr. Udrak Nathaniel is doing right now with his camera. I'm seeing his everywhere is dark, but I can see his bright eyes. Please, thank you very much. Mr. Manuel, I can't really hear you. That's the problem
That was
right
a
now.
mistake. Sorry, that was a mistake.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Manuel, maybe later on, I can't really hear you. You're breaking. Mr. Boyeji, you have the floor right now. You can speak. Then later, Nena will be able to talk.
So, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Mr. Sunday.
Okay, so like a quick one, yeah, you are not yet there, but like really, in some cases, some people use return statements under
Yes,
function. So
yes,
I just
yes.
want to
We are not
understand,
there
is it
yet.
the same thing?
We are not
Can
there
I
yet,
still
sir.
use return? Okay. Then the last one you did is like the new function, like that student data. It depends on the previous ones.
Yes, we are referencing from the previous ones.
Okay, okay. So that one will not work
Hello?
unless hello, can you hear me?
Yes?
Like the student data will not work unless I first define the other ones.
Yes, you must define the other ones so as to reference the ones you have built before. Except you want to create in a new kind of scope, a new kind of this information for that particular function. In this case, we did not need to do any other one, just need to reference the other functions, the nested kind of functions inside another function.
Okay, yes, thank you.
All right, and then now you have the floor right now. We have 5 minutes to go. Nena, you're up. You can say something. We are hearing you.
I didn't get the function for the student data.
Okay, I should
student
recap
data.
it.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I should do it. I should show you again. Should I show you again?
Yes, student data.
Okay.
Yeah, come on, Daddy.
Yes.
Okay, you can see my screen right now. You can see I defined another function called student define def student underscore data, and I referenced I referenced other functions I've built before, which were we had the student's name, which was the Kevin 2 here. We have another function called the student age, which was age 34, and we have another function known as student language, which was language is Python. So, and all this one, when we call out the three functions, it gave us answers. The function is supposed to carry out. Now, what happened now is that we do not want to call each of them one after the other. We use a particular kind of parent kind of function to put all of them together. And once we call out the student underscore data, we are creating another function, which is student data, but we are referencing the other functions, which were student underscore name, student underscore age, and student underscore language. So once we finish that, once we do that, we do not call the student's name again, student age, student language again. We just call out the function student underscore data, and it will bring out other ones that has been referenced from the previous function. Do you get it now, Lena? Is she with us? Did you get it?
Thank you. Second question is the import. Yes, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, I've gotten it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the second question is based on the imports. Can we use the yes? Second question, the import that you use, can we also use that import to get data from maybe Excel?
Okay. Excel, it's when I said import, when I told you something like that, I told you that it's in the Python model. Python model. It's in the Python model. it only works for Python model, except you are using other libraries, like when we get advanced, when we want to read the CSV files and the XSLS files. We can actually do that, but we need a particular package for that, which we can use to reference, especially those that will be going to data science after this. It's possible.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Mark, you are next.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, please mute yourself wherever you are. If you are not Mr. Mark, please mute yourself.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Ekemini.
Yes,
just 2 comments. The first one, I think you need to see a doctor. You've been coughing and coughing and coughing.
Yes, it's the weather here. I'm sorry about that.
Then that's the first part. Then the second part is what I want to ask is, can the output of the various functions we've looked at today, can they be joined together? I'm just thinking, is it doable?
Okay, like trying to bring this other one, referencing each function at a particular point.
Then to concatenate them together into a string, possibly as a string. I'm just thinking, is it doable?
I can actually try that out. It's very possible when it comes to Python as a whole. It's very, very possible. You can actually reference it as the same way we have done this for that. Is going to be very, very possible. I've not tried that in a very long time. Okay, it's very possible, but you can check it out. All right. Oh, I'm seeing different hands. Okay, Mr. Fon, your hand is up.
Yeah. Hello, are you there?
Yes, please. These are the last set of questions I'll be taking. Mr. Stephen Amire and Gabriel Udo, please. Next, these ones will be the ones I'll be taking last. Okay, Fon, you have the floor.
Just let me go over the definition of functions again. Just go through it again.
Okay, the definition of function is simply trying to tell you that function is a special code fragment that is written to perform a particular task, to perform a particular or a specific task. You can see we saw that in our code while we were trying to create a function. It was performing a specific kind of task, which was inside that, to print this, to print that, and to print the rest. So it is a special code fragment.
Just go to that last part that you were just the code part of it.
Which
through your screen sharing.
I should go to it.
Yeah, let me do. Yeah. Just start from the beginning. From here. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the next person, Mr. Stephen Amire, you have the floor. Then the next should be Mr. Gabriel. Please, I will not entertain any other question apart from this. We are late. We are done with the class.
Good evening, sir. Well done.
Thank you very much.
So I was trying to pick up. So I was stopped where we're trying to define the function for the student's name, the language, the age. We're trying to print it out. That's where I'm stuck right now.
Okay. First of all, you do not print out functions. You call out functions. I will share my screen very soon. So we look at what we have here in the students. When we're defining all of them, we started with the name. Look at it. We started with the name. Print. The only function this particular student name was to do is to call out print name Ekemino2, and we call it out, and it gave us that. The same with student age. The function, though we did not play it out here, we did not call out the function, but it's supposed to do the same. Age 34, language Python. Now we brought them out and called it out, all of them at once, and you saw it gave us exactly what we're looking for. Now the next one we did was actually what we defined a kind of parent kind of function and to put all of them together inside this particular student's data. And we said student underscore name, student underscore age, and student underscore language. And when we call out the student underscore data, it gave us all the things that we have done in the other functions. Okay.
Okay.
So,
sir.
Yes.
Can I try to I'm using my laptop, but my phone is what I'm using currently. Can you see my screen from here? I'm trying to do a screen.
Okay, we can see your screen. Yes.
Okay, can you see this?
Okay, I can
So
see
I
what do
try
you
to
think is
include some other
you're using the print here, you're using the print function here. You're using print instead of defining a function, which is you're trying to create a function now. Yes.
Yeah. Now I'm trying
Yes.
to I'm trying
Yes.
to bring it out.
Yes,
So
you
this is
can do it now. You can do it now. You can start doing your first function now. These other ones will print. Now you can do it now. You are using name, age, language, color, and club. Very good. Manchester United fan. Well done. I'm also one of them, but they have been messing with my life recently. Okay.
Right.
So that is it. You can do the same thing, define a function, each of them. Once you are done, you can now say student underscore data, put all of them together as I've done before. Okay, Mr. Gabriel, you have the floor right now. I think
Okay,
you be the last person up.
Yeah, very quickly. I was trying to see what the last person was asking, but if it's okay, I could just share my screen.
Okay, share your screen.
Yeah, so this is what I did. If you can see my screen now.
Okay.
So somebody asked earlier, I think that was Mark. Well, I don't know whether this is a question, whether I could squeeze everything under one function and just bring them. Yeah, that's the question I wanted to ask. And then I thought, okay, while they were asking questions, I could just try it myself.
Try it out. Very good. Fantastic.
Yeah, and I did. So this is what I got. I don't know whether it answers the first
yes,
question.
instead of even using different prints, you can just use new line and just say
I thought of that too. So you have one long line here and then it just prints. That's just what I wanted to mention.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I think that will be all for tonight. So I really want to answer your question, but okay, what is it? Tell me, what is it? Okay, Nenaza was still up, that's why. All right, at this point.
I just want to see the last person's screen. I didn't see his screen.
Whose screen? The Mr. Gabriel's screen? All right.
Yes, the last person that asked a question now.
Okay. Can you see his screen now? Okay. Miss Nena, can you see his screen?
No, I think I'm having network issue here. Maybe later I'll go through the class. Yes.
Okay, maybe you can just send it, Mr. Gabriel, you can just send it as a screenshot to the group.
No.
All right, with this, at this particular point, I would like to say a good night from me to you and have a fantastic night rest. And for those in Russia, I think it's almost morning. Okay, Mr. David, I've not heard your voice today. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. I just came very late and I could not say anything. So I will look on I will see the record.
Okay, what time is it over there?
I am 23:37, like 11 p.m.
Okay, almost 12. Okay, sorry about that. It could be. All right, OJ, Ami. Okay, OJ, did you get tonight's session? Good night, thank you. Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone. You can actually, the class has officially ended. Let me stop the recording. It will be available for everyone.